No, the comment section in this video is going to be horrendous.
Well, you know what?
They're going to come for us.
Listen,
I was already fighting with you in my head while I was doing my hair this morning.
I'm kind of curious how much of our audience is going to give a shit about this 100-year-old movie.
I don't know, man. Isn't it considered a classic?
Yes.
I thought it was.
I thought it was too.
Am I the only one that liked it?
I kind of have a feeling
This movie is trash.
No, I liked it.
Okay.
1978. Superman, the movie.
Listen.
Christopher Reeves, Gene Hackman, and
Marlon Brando.
Messed up Lois Lane.
Yeah.
She's haggard, dude. I was like watching this. I'm like, dude. And my wife was watching it with me too. And she was sitting there. She's like, what is wrong with Lois? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, she looks gaunt. Her eyes are all freaking fucked up.
Got smoker mouth.
Terrible teeth.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, man. 70s must have been a hell of an age. I don't know. This movie is so bad. I couldn't believe it.
I think we should start.
R.I.P. Margot Kidder.
I've seen it before, but it's been a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think I got this one and the second one mixed up.
Well,
the second one's much better, right? Because that's when he fights Zod.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I got
Neil before Zod.
I got these two movies mixed up. Like somehow they meshed together. And I was like, oh yeah, there's like an origin story. And then Zod shows up and like all hell breaks loose. I'm like, I was watching this. I'm like, when is something cool going to happen?
Yeah.
It's 2 hours and 23 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
It's an absurd amount of time for a Superman origin story.
Are we going?
Yeah, we're going.
Are we going?
This is it.
All right.
Welcome to the show.
In the decade of the 1930s, even the great city of Metropolis.
I don't know if I want to dump my salt yet.
I'm dumping it.
Yeah.
I'm going to hate on this movie. I'm sorry.
Is Jude doing a synopsis?
Well, yeah. Do you want to do it, Jude? You want to go right now? You want to like start with the synopsis and just roll into it?
Oh, I'm not prepared.
Oh, no.
What should I do with my hands? Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello. There it is. She got it in.
1979 Superman, rated PG with a runtime of 2 hours, 23 minutes. This had a budget of $55 million. What do you think this brought into the box office?
I don't know. 68 million.
100 million.
All right. Had a budget of $55 million with a box office of $300 million. This was a huge hit.
Yeah, it was.
Why?
Yeah, so it was the most expensive movie ever made at the time. $55 million was an insane amount back in those days. And it was the highest grossing movie of all time at that time because like that was, I think in today's money adjusted for inflation, that was like close to like $1 billion or something.
I just feel like sensibilities have changed.
Oh, they have.
Well, do you want me to tell you what it's about?
I mean,
because I don't think you get it.
Sure. Something about real estate. I don't know.
Marlon Brando sends baby Kal-El to Earth, where he's adopted by farmers and renamed Clark W. Griswold Kent. The Kents raise Clark to be a good, humble, all-shucks boy and to hide his superpowers. After Papa Kent dies, Clark moves to the big city of Metropolis to get a day job at a newspaper and a night job fighting crime. When the city's first superhero gives Lois Lane an exclusive interview, he reveals all his strengths and weaknesses to her, giving Gene Hackman all he needs to lure poor, dumb Superman into his kryptonite booby trap, and then leaves him alone to get rescued by Lex's sidekick chick. Now Superman's got to stop 2 missiles heading to opposite sides of the country, but luckily, if he doesn't make it in time, he can just rewind the planet. Discuss.
Exactly. What's
this movie's?
And that was Superman.
This movie is bull crap.
Aw, it's a feel-good movie. I loved it. I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I loved it.
Really?
Yeah. This is the first, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the first like major motion picture starring Superman and Christopher Reeves was like a big heartthrob, and this was a huge smash success. This was constantly on the TV as I was growing up. And it's just like nostalgic for me. Is it a perfect movie? Absolutely not. But for 1978, it wasn't like the standards weren't as high as far as like physics and beauty.
It was very, very comic booky.
So I think the first thing Alex needs to understand is that Christopher Reeve is basically the 70s and 80s version of Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
He was the cookie cutter mold for Superman.
Yes.
Nobody was allowed to have ever played Superman except for Christopher
And
Reeve.
he was known for this.
Until he,
Had
broke his back and fell
Yeah.
off.
It was a horse riding accident.
Yeah, it was awful. But he was quintessential Superman, and I think he's great in the role. I mean, to this day, I still picture Christopher Reeve as Superman.
Yeah.
And not Henry Cavill, but that's because I'm 53 now, not 33.
Well,
or whatever it is you are. and it's just, but my problem with this movie, is like every bit of love that I have for this movie is all nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I watched this movie for the first time in probably 15 years this week. And my God, it has not aged well at all. It's all over the place. There's weird story elements to it. There's acid trip graphics. There's just weird cuts and weird edits. And a lot of shit just doesn't make any sense.
Like what? Can you be more specific?
Like the Lex Luthor stuff. It's like, oh, we're going to do this. And then all of a sudden, like that. And now we're in Midwest pulling over nuclear missile trucks and stuff, and it's just weird. Yeah. It's just a weird take.
And his whole plan.
Was stupid as fuck. It's so dumb.
We're going to cause an earthquake that's going to drop California off the side of the map.
Genius.
I did, however, find myself getting super horny for Miss Tessmacher. For the first time ever. Because when I was a kid,
because you're old.
She's like this old lady, right?
She's so his type.
And I'm like, God damn, Miss Tessmacher is fine. Jesus Christ, what happened? I got old.
There's that great part where she's the decoy lying on the side of the road after the car crash.
Oh, in the red dress.
With the wig and the all the army men around her, and the sergeant's like, stand aside, man. I'm not going to ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself.
They're like arguing over who's going to give her mouth to mouth.
That was super creepy. And then he's like, let me handle this, boys. All right, about face. And they all turn around and make a circle so that nobody can see what he's doing. And I'm like, what is he doing?
I need somebody to double check this right now. Because in my head, the captain or sergeant that just doing the mouth to mouth, he reminded me of Red Foreman from the 70s show.
Oh, I don't think it was that accurate.
No, I don't think so. I think I would have caught that.
I looked a lot like him, and it sounded like him too, but it probably isn't. But
y'all have the technology.
Yeah, I can't talk and use my hands at the same time. But it's just,
you know who was originally supposed to play Miss Tessmacher?
Who?
Goldie Hawn.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
That would have been better.
Yeah,
but she had a scheduling conflict, so she had to drop out. Unfortunately,
that's too bad. That would have made this movie better.
Private Benjamin.
I don't know.
Yeah, that would have been better. I don't know. Like, I understand that Christopher Reeves was for a very long time the quintessential Superman, and I like Superman 2 was a good movie.
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando was pretty cool. That's another guy that I think I'm in the wrong era to appreciate him because I see him in movies and I'm like, yeah.
It's like, here's what I see. I say, my son,
you come to me on my day of my daughter's wedding.
I send you to Earth.
That's all I see.
I send you to Earth to be the biggest.
You've never seen Streetcar Named Desire?
Alex, your problem is you've only seen old Brando.
Yeah.
You've only seen Brando at the stage of his career where he stopped caring.
He really stopped giving a shit.
Brando was like the Christopher Reeve of his time. He was a fucking heartthrob. Like young Brando was gorgeous.
He was also considered one of the greatest actors to ever live.
Yeah.
Like a legend in his own time type thing.
I love his response to that because I have seen his interviews and like when they were like, you're considered to be one of the greatest actors of all time. He's like, I'm not the greatest actor. My dog is the greatest actor. He acts like he loves me.
I just find it funny that Brando is in this role.
Yeah.
And his wig with the Superman curl in the front, it's almost too much for me to bear. It's really funny.
Well, the funny thing about Brando is that, so like at this point in his career, like he didn't want to work, but he still wanted to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So basically the way that this movie came about is these two Hungarian producers wanted to make a Superman movie. And at the time, comic book movies were kind of like frowned upon because they were just like goofy. Everyone was thinking about Batman 66, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of ruined everyone's perception of what a superhero movie could be. And so Warner Brothers, which owned DC Comics, like they had the rights to make a Superman movie, but they didn't want to do it. And so these two Hungarian producers, I believe they were called the Siskins or something like that, they bought the rights to the Superman property and they start pitching it around town. And Warner Brothers basically said, they entered into what's called a negative pickup deal, which basically says like, okay, you go off, you get all the funding for this movie, you make the movie, and when it's done, you bring it to us and we'll cut you a check and we'll distribute it. So it's basically a way of the studio like minimizing their risk. So like they're not putting any upfront money. Mm-hmm. And so these producers basically went out, and the first thing that they did to kind of give it credibility was they hired Mario Puzo to write the script. And he's the writer of the novel The Godfather, and he also wrote the screenplay for The Godfather. And so around this time, The Godfather was like the biggest movie.
He was like, I can get you Brando.
So Puzo added like a lot of weight to it, where it's like, oh, they're taking this seriously. And that got them to get Brando on board. And they made this insane deal with Brando to get him on the movie, which was something like they agreed to pay him like $4 million for 12 days of work.
It's crazy.
And then once Brando was attached, they were able to get Gene Hackman, who was another one of the biggest actors in Hollywood at the time, attached to the movie. And with those two in place, they were able to get financing for the film. And because it was a negative pickup deal, which basically means that like, you know, the studio would pay them once it was done, they decided to make 2 movies at the same time. And that was kind of Puzo's idea, where it was like The Godfather Part 1 and 2, and it was going to be Superman Part 1 and 2. And so that way they could like double their investment.
Okay.
Clever.
It makes a little bit more sense why they have this opening scene on Krypton with Zod.
Yeah, they were actually shooting Superman 2 at the same time as they were shooting the first movie.
Okay.
And
this is Christopher Reeve's first major film.
Yes, first major film. I think he had done one movie before this one, but he was basically an unknown. And at the time, they were kind of looking at like Robert Redford or Paul Newman to play like Superman. But when it was kind of funny the way that this movie was set up, because it was originally going to be shot in Italy. And so like they hired a director from like the James Bond films to come on and do it. And they spent like $2 to $4 million on pre-production in Italy. And then they at a certain point, the Italian lira went up in price and the British pound went down, and it became too cost inefficient to shoot in Italy. So they had to move to the UK. And the director they hired was like a tax exile from the UK, so he couldn't go back to the country. And so like they had to fire him, and they called up Richard Donner, who directed this movie, because the producers had just seen The Omen. Oh. And they really liked what he did with The Omen, and they had been out to a couple other like big name Hollywood people like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and stuff like that. But none of them had any time in their schedule to do this. So they called up Richard Donner, who was on the toilet when he answered the phone, and they were like, "Hey, we want to pay you $1 million to direct a Superman movie." And Richard Donner, at the time, he was making $100,000 a picture, and so he was like, "Sold,
let's go,
yeah, let's do it."
So basically, you know, he picked up this movie that was already like in production, like actors had already been cast. And when it comes to Brando, so at this point, Brando was trying to get out of actually doing any work for this movie, because like at the time, $4 million for an actor to do 12 days of shooting was just unheard of. So when he first met with Brando came in and he's like, "Yeah, you know, I think Jor-El should be like a glowing bagel." a glowing green bagel, and I don't think he should talk. I think Kryptonians would just like hum and like an electric sound, and you can have subtitles on there. Basically, he was making suggestions to like
lessen his workload.
Yeah, exactly. So that he could collect his paycheck and not have to do anything. And Richard Donner was like, "Yeah, no, I don't see that happening." You know, so in every scene that Brando's in, okay, so like he didn't want to memorize any of his lines. Mm-hmm. So every scene he's in, they have like cue cards, like right off screen that looks like, and he's walking around, they have like the different cue cards like set up to like for him to read off of. And in the scene where he's putting his child into the spaceship, his lines are written on the child's diaper.
Oh my God.
And so like basically like he just like reads like his lines throughout the course of this movie.
Well, he did that on Godfather, correct? I remember seeing
An Island of Dr. Moreau,
a set photo of like, I think it was Robert Duvall or something like that with a cue card on his chest. And Brando was in front of him, and he was just like reading his lines off him. Brando's famous for that kind of stuff. And that's the Brando that I know. Like, that's the only version of him I've ever heard of. So I'm like, this guy's a freaking hack. And everybody's like, he's the greatest actor ever. And I'm like,
yeah, you need to see some early Brando stuff. I'm putting it on my list.
Like, is he though? But anyway, that being said, my favorite part of this movie is the Kryptonian stuff.
Really?
Just visually, it's
they're
fun.
All like wrapped in tinfoil.
Yeah, they're wrapped in tinfoil. It's like this is fancy. It's like basically the stuff that they put on lightsabers to make them shine back in the 70s. Yeah. It was cool. I like that scene. And I like the geode crystal cities and stuff like that.
I think it's really easy to kind of like dismiss how advanced this movie was nowadays because like technology has come so far. But like, for instance, there's a scene in this movie where young Clark Kent in Smallville kicks a ball and the football just goes flying into the sky. And you have to remember that at that time, what they had to do was they dug a hole, they put in an air cannon and launched this football like into the distance.
So he's just kicking and then and it just goes flying.
And nowadays that would just be CGI. But like you don't think about that stuff. Like for instance, when the young Clark Kent jumped in front of that train, that was the actor on a rig swinging in front of a moving train. In fact, he almost got clipped by the train. In that
wasn't
shot.
some kind of a double exposure thing where they have him run and they film the train behind him.
The whole thing where he's running, it looks goofy. That's one of the things that I did not like about this movie is a lot of the effects just look janky. Yeah. And they're super dated.
And they say they're...
Well, I mean, they look janky because they were like, it's kind of like looking at like stop motion versus CGI. I get it. Like they were innovating stuff. This was like the first time anyone had been able to do any of this for this movie. All the flying scenes.
It's like, here's my thing. Okay. There's one movie that came out in the 70s that I judge all other movies that came out in the 70s against, and that's Star Wars. Star Wars came out before this movie, and its effects were 1,000,000 times better on a way less of a budget.
I understand what you're saying, but I think the effects are different. He's using miniatures and shit like that. This is people doing shit.
I'm just saying the technology was maybe available to him. I don't know. Maybe they couldn't go to Lucasfilm or whatever the fuck it was called back then. But it's just the sets and stuff are kind of cool. But the practical effects look weird. You know, I mean, when he's flying, he's on a thing and he's in front of a big screen.
Yeah, well, that's like the classic. Like, they still do that.
I know. They still do that. But it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
It doesn't. It hasn't aged well.
No, but at the time it looked amazing. Like
hold
on. I'm sorry. Okay.
At the time it looked amazing because, you know, the tagline for this movie was "You'll believe a man can fly," and the entire crux of this film was based around the belief that the audience would believe Superman was real and he was actually flying. And so they had like 6 different methods of making him look like he was flying. One of them was the blue screen rear projection. And that's one of the reasons why his suit is a lighter blue, because like otherwise it would have been keyed out. But like they worked out like weird like camera zooms to make it look like he was like zooming by. There were like wire rigs. There were like all types of like weird things. In fact, the movie spent like $2 million on failed flight tests before they even got going, just to try to figure out like, okay, how can we make this real? And this movie actually shares a lot of DNA with Star Wars, oddly enough. Like the production designer was the same guy who did Star Wars. In fact, Christopher Reeve, when he was first cast, he was like super skinny.
Yeah.
And David Prowse, who played Darth Vader, was his personal trainer who got him bulked up for Superman.
I remember there was an interview that I saw a million years ago where they were saying like he was so skinny that when they put the costume on him, it kind of like flapped around on him and he had to bulk up for it.
Yeah, and they had to like put shoe polish in his hair to make it, because like he's like kind of a strawberry blonde naturally. So like you know, they had to give him like black shoe polish hair.
He's a gin.
Before I dump some salt on the flying scene with Lois, I just want to take a second.
You've got me.
Just want to take a second to remind our followers.
Well, this is how you fly. You touch fingers.
Oh, is that how you guys are gonna? Anyway, real quick.
She's being mean to me today.
She's not into you.
Oh, whatever.
Hey,
don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Real quick, I just want to remind our followers that if you guys like what we do here and you want to support us, go to saltynerd.com/DC and download a mobile game called Dragon Champions. It's a game that supports us as a podcast. We want to return the favor. So when you download the game, make sure you use that promo code SALTY in the promo code area. Gives you a leg up on the competition, and join our guild. We have a Discord chat room that is super active. Those guys go on raids every single week. It's a ton of fun to play this game, really easy to pick up. And like you said, you're going to be helping out the channel by doing so. So please download Dragon Champions on your Android or Apple device and have a good time. Join us in our guild when you reach that level 20. saltynerd.com/DC. DC. Hey, DC. DC. Oh,
that was smooth.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Anyway. Look, man, I was having this discussion with my wife. She was watching this movie with me, and she was like, this isn't possible. Just physics would not allow her.
Yeah.
Like she has to have the strongest core ever to be able to hold herself upright like that. I'm like, I don't think when they were making this film, my impression of this was like, they said early on, Brando was like, he'll be able to defy gravity. And I'm like, so they're not thinking of it as if he's like literally projecting himself through the air and flying. He's defying gravity. So I think has more of a magical tone to it in this movie where like, if Superman's touching somebody, they get his anti-gravity power for a short term. And that's the only way you can make sense of her flying through space and just like touching tips and still floating around. It doesn't make any sense. This
has set the stage for the rest of the superhero movies where we had to take into consideration, okay, is this actually realistic? At the time, this is a perfect example of don't think about it too much. We just want it to be pretty.
But do you think it's more of like a magical element to it?
No.
You think they're just like...
The yellow sun gives him superpowers.
No, I mean to be able to transfer it to Lois.
So in the comic books, at least in the 80s reboot that came out after this movie, the way Superman flies is that he actually has this like field that he generates around him that he can extend to other things. So the idea was that, he was extending this field around Lois. And so like, in the movie, they don't really explain it very well, but he spends like 12 years with his father in the Fortress of Solitude, learning all about like Kryptonians and his powers and stuff like that. So by the time he gets to like, Metropolis, like he's an old school, like all this stuff. The way that they handled the comic book elements, even though it was a more serious take on comic books than any other film had ever done up to this point, some goofiness and camp was still kind of like present because basically, so when Mario Puzo delivered his script, it was for 2 movies, Superman 1 and 2, and it was a 500-page script. It was like thick as a book.
Jesus.
And it was almost as long as the Jupiter Ascending script. Like when he delivered that, the producers thought that it was too heavy. It was too serious. And so they brought on some TV writers to kind of like, lighten it up. And they came in and they put in all types of goofy superhero elements to it. Like at one point, Kojak appears because it was like the #1 TV show, and Telly Savalas is supposed to be there and be like, "Who loves you, baby?" Or something like that. And so by the time Richard Donner came on, and he had this like mishmash of a massive script that had like all these campy elements to it mixed in with serious elements, he brought on his own writer and started just like rewriting the whole thing. But some of that stuff did work its way in. So like, there's a scene where Superman jumps out a window and he just magically morphs from like his suit into like the Superman outfit. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that. Like in Superman 2, he takes off like his S shield and throws it and it becomes like this big net type thing. Yeah. So, at a certain point, you have to realize this was the 70s. They didn't really care about like logical, things making sense.
They just wanted their movie to make money, not stand the test of time.
And being a comic book movie, they basically said like, this gives us a license to kind of like fudge things here and there.
Yeah, there's a fantastical element. Go ahead, V. You were going to say.
I was just going to. I'm wondering if our current sensibilities ruins this kind of a movie for me.
100%.
Because I look at these things now as a middle-aged dude, and I don't have that sense of awe and wonder that I did when I was a kid.
Well,
it was and nowadays from his Testmacher.
Yeah, and nowadays these superhero movies that we get
hyper
inundated with are just so next level as far as all the effects and everything goes. It's weird to go back to how this movie was made, and look at it and even be able to like.
But I think it's just a general sensibility across the culture because my kid, 8 years old, watched this movie and walked out halfway through.
Really?
Yeah. He was like, "This is stupid."
He was telling me about it yesterday. He loved it.
Oh no! When we were watching it, he was like, liar. He was like, "This movie's. I'm gonna go do something else. I'm out. This movie's dumb." So like even him at his age, like he sees cartoon superheroes and stuff like that, and this is dated for him. Even though he's never seen it before. Yeah. So it's a weird thing because I really I should appreciate this movie for what it is and considering it came out in 1978 and all that stuff. But I'm just like, oh man, it was tough. It was really tough to watch. There was a lot of things I was like, my wife and I were watching this scene right here that we have on the screen where the Kents find Clark. And my wife is like, this is super creepy. naked baby in the middle of the field, and the mom's like, "Let's just keep him." She's like,
right? He's ours now.
He's ours now.
Okay, it was also the 60s when they found him.
That don't matter. You didn't keep babies that you just found on the side of the road.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Otherwise, who's there to call? You don't have cell phones. You pick that baby up, you bring him home, and then who do you call? No one. You just raise him.
Call Joe the sheriff.
You go to town, take him to the hospital.
Yeah. Hey, we found this baby in a cornfield.
We got a free farm hand.
Yeah.
It's like, and I look at this now and I see weird stuff like this scene that we're talking about just now.
Yes.
Okay, so like the scene is the comet goes in and it lands in the middle of the cornfield, right?
Yeah.
That's where the camera angle's from,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see the car on the side of the road 2 miles away.
Yeah. You see like a big trail.
Yeah. And then when you get out and they get out of the car, well, there's the comet.
Yeah. It's
right inside
there.
the ditch next to the road. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about where it annoys me because this dude over here has taught me how to watch for stupid little things like that.
This is your fault.
In a movie that bugs me. You know what I mean? The weird edits and stuff. It's like, well, that comet should be farther away. That should be like a mile out in the middle of that field, not right next to the road where they can just walk down the corner and get it. It's just, I don't know. It's just weird things like that.
Yeah.
Stand out to me now.
It's continuity. They didn't really give a shit about continuity.
No.
Well, I'm a little bit more forgiving with movies from this era simply because, movies were made in a different way back then. Like you actually had to edit on film. You had like work prints and you had stuff where like, when you had to do optical effects, like they had to be done on film and delivered like at different times. And so like oftentimes you were doing a work print of, an assembly cut of the movie without, the actual like special effects and the special effects house wasn't exactly communicating with like the production team. And, this was like the baby stages of modern day special effects. Mm-hmm. And so like, these errors are going to happen. Like for instance, like the translucent suits that the Kryptonians would all wear. Mm-hmm. Like they were made up of these like tiny like glass beads. And like if you actually touched them, the oil from your fingers would deaden them. Like so that there'd be like these dead pixels basically on the suits. And so like they had to be handled with like a lot of care. And otherwise like the effect wouldn't work right. Mm-hmm. And it was just like there were a lot of things where like this movie pushed the boundary of like what was possible at the time. And so, there are going to be mistakes, but I think that if we're just judging it based off of like movies nowadays, like if we're putting up against nowadays movies, then like, I agree with these criticisms. But the fact that like this is a movie of a certain time period.
Yeah, this is like our movie's grandpa.
Yeah. I think that there needs to be a little bit of leeway in terms of like how these criticisms land for it.
You gotta respect your elders.
I suppose. I do feel bad that I didn't like this movie, but I don't want to watch it.
I feel bad that I dislike it more.
I think
I used to like it and now I'm just kind of whatever.
If I would have watched the second one like immediately after, I think my opinion on this one.
I actually wanted to.
Yeah, because like I didn't realize it was supposed to be like literally a part one, part two. I thought, like I said, I melded these two movies together. Like I remember the like young Clark at the football team running through the cornfield. I remember that. And then I remember fighting Zod in Metropolis. Yeah. So like there's a big gap that I forgot about in this movie.
I actually do think that Superman 2 is a better movie, simply because like you get, a lot more action in that movie. Mm-hmm. This is a very well done, I feel like setup film.
It's an introduction to Superman.
Yeah, it's a good first act. And the I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay. Perfect.
That's what I
do. So I talked a little bit about how much I dislike the whole Lois Lane flying thing, but I do want to talk about Lois.
Margot Kidder.
My God.
R.I.P.
What was going on in the 70s?
I don't know.
She
people
looked.
had just found out about cocaine. So
it was brand new on the streets. She's kind of like, I got to do it. I'm like watching this movie and I'm like, man, like I understand beauty standards changed, but there was still like people that you showed me posters of from the 70s. You're like, this was the hottie from the 70s. I'm like, God damn, like that's freaking smoking.
She was no Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, she's no Farrah Fawcett.
I get Margot Kidder and Karen Allen confused a lot.
They're very similar in terms of looks. But what's funny is that so basically when they were casting Superman, they went through like 200 different like actors who like screen tested. In fact, one of the producers, his wife went to get a dental cleaning, and she thought her dentist looked like Superman, so she had him like screen test. So like, you know, by the time they got to Christopher Reeve, like they were like, okay, we're going to go with an unknown actor. He's going to, you know, screen test against, you know, different Loises. And it's kind of funny because I watched, you know, some of the documentaries on the making of this movie, and they actually had some screen tests with like Leslie Ann Warren, who played Miss Scarlet in Clue. Like she auditioned for Lois, and they showed these screen tests, and it was really interesting to watch because like none of these actresses were right for this part. And then Margot Kidder comes in, and she like her performance, like, yeah, she's not like the best looking lady for Lois Lane, but her performance was like so much more natural with Christopher Reeve that it was an easy pick to see like why they cast her. And she was like, she was a very young, unknown actress at the time. And you know, what's unfortunate about her is like, you know, she lived a long time with undiagnosed manic depressive disorder, like bipolar disorder. And she got in a really bad car wreck later on in her career, where she was. It was
in the 90s.
Yeah, it was in the 90s, and she was like actually like paralyzed for like a while, like she couldn't walk. And when she recovered from that, she had like this weird manic episode where she disappeared for 4 days and like had to be hospitalized and put in a psychiatric institute.
I remember this. Didn't they find her like she had like broken into some stranger's house and thought that it was her house? And like they had to call like authorities to come and take her.
She had
away.
like a complete psychotic break.
You guys just trying to make me feel bad.
And then when she died, it was a suicide by.
Oh God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a suicide by overdose.
Jesus, I don't know what this has to do with Superman.
I don't know either.
Well, it's just interesting to talk about the actors in this movie because you had Christopher Reeve and that tragedy, and then you had the tragedy with Margot Kidder. You know what's also funny is
funny ha
or no, funny odd. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Gene Hackman.
Well, before you do, I just wanted to say like that was one of the things that I noticed right away when I was watching this, and I haven't seen this since I was a kid, was the chemistry between Superman and Lois Lane is so believable that it just made me really want to like invest in this story and see where it went. And not really care so much about like, could this really happen? I was just along for the ride, and it's due to the chemistry between the two actors.
But that poem song thing that was going on inside her head while she was flying, wasn't cringy to anybody else?
Well, no, it was pretty cringy. Originally, it was supposed to be an actual song, but Richard Donner was like, "Yeah, this is too cringy, so we're just going to make it a monologue."
If you'd never even heard of a superhero before, and you're standing with a superhero, wouldn't you think in your head, are you reading my mind right now? Can you do that too?
I thought they were trying to portray that he could read her mind, and that's why we were hearing her thoughts.
Yeah, but again, this is a movie where, like, you know, you put on a pair of glasses and they can't tell it's you.
They still do that.
That's the Superman thing.
Yeah. That's the Superman thing.
Willikers.
I want to talk about Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor real quick. So Gene Hackman was basically cast for his name recognition in Hollywood, but he was notoriously difficult to work with as an actor. And he was one of these actors who he would test directors to see if they were like, you know, going to be easy to control or if they didn't have a strong vision. And if they failed the test, he would basically take over the movie. And if they passed,
we've talked about this before.
Yeah. So Gene Hackman basically came on and basically said, like, at the time he had like this big mustache, and he's like, I'm not going to shave my mustache. I'm not going to shave my head. I'm not going to wear a bald cap. He actually was afraid that by agreeing to do this movie, it would hurt his career as a serious actor, because he thought that this was like basically like a cartoony, campy type movie. And when Richard Donner came on board as the director, so before he was able to meet with Gene Hackman, he got on the phone with him, and Hackman's like, I'm not shaving my mustache. I'm just not. And Donner's like, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you shave your mustache, I'll shave my mustache. And you know, I guess at the time, like, mustaches were a big deal.
Yes.
And
very sexy to have a mustache.
Yes. And so
70s stash.
Yeah, 70s stash. And so Gene Hackman was like, you do that? Richard Donner was like, yeah, we'll shave together. He's like, if you don't have a mustache, I don't have a mustache. If you shave your head, I shave my head. And so Hackman was like, okay, I'll shave my mustache if you shave your mustache. And of course, like, Richard Donner didn't have a mustache. He was just like bluffing him. And so, like, when they got on set, they kept, because, you know, the character was bald. And in fact, in the comic books, Superman caused a young Lex Luthor to go bald. And that's why Lex Luthor hates Superman.
That's it. Is male pattern baldness?
Yeah, it's male pattern baldness.
Origin story for villains.
It's like Jor-El Bard.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty
From
much,
Norseman.
pretty much.
Believable.
But that was the original like origin story for Lex Luthor,
That's
where
hilarious.
like Superboy like flew by and caused one of his experiments to go awry and made him lose all of his hair.
Oh my gosh.
But in the movie, so like because Gene Hackman wouldn't shave his head, they came up with this idea to have him like wearing wigs, and so they'd style his hair differently in different scenes to make it look like a wig.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, by the end of the shoot, or by the end of like the time that they had with Hackman, because they had to shoot Brando and Hackman stuff like at the front of the schedule, Donner finally convinced him to wear like a bald cap for like his prison scene. And it's just a credit to Donner that he was able to get Hackman and Brando to give such good performances in this movie, because neither of them wanted to be there and neither of them took the material seriously.
That's the kind of stuff that makes me annoyed with actors.
Yeah, you're getting paid millions
prima
of
donna
dollars.
bullshit.
Put in the effort.
Gee, like dealing with other personalities, it takes skill, doesn't it?
This guy knows a lot about this movie. I didn't know any of this stuff. I was just watching it and I'm like, man, this is not aged great.
He probably had to study this movie.
Ungrateful.
I am a little, I do feel like I'm a little bit of an ungrateful nerd because I'm watching this and I'm like, I understand that this paved the way for the movies that I enjoy and I get it, but God damn, there's just some stuff that just
you can
gets
be critical of something that you just
super
don't think
old.
is aged well.
You know what's weird is like, so I hadn't seen this movie in a while, and growing up, like I watched this movie and I always thought it was okay. But rewatching it, I was like, they don't make movies like this anymore. This movie really takes its time. It's slow. It's deliberately paced. It sets things up in a very methodical way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised at how much I enjoyed rewatching it, because I don't have like a ton of fond memories about this movie because I was always more of a Batman guy. But with this movie, it just felt like nice and wholesome and nostalgic.
Yeah.
And from like a bygone era of like true Americana, like you watched like those cornfield scenes in this movie and you're just like, oh man, that's America, you know? And so like
farmland.
Yeah, farmland.
I don't know. They've got that in Henry Cavill's Superman too. He spends a lot of time in the farmland.
Yeah, but
she loses the farm.
there's always some cynical bend to like the modern Superman stuff, because I feel like modern filmmakers just have a lens of cynicism.
Yeah.
Where they're like, if it's not grim dark, it's not realistic. But like with this movie, like Richard Donner came in and basically said like, hey, this is going to be about America, and we're going to make it like mom and apple pie and, you know,
America's
nostalgic.
hero.
Yeah, exactly. So I very much enjoyed this because it felt nice and wholesome to me. You know?
Oh, just something stupid. I'm sorry to derail you, but the product placement for Cheerios in this movie was on point. There was a couple of shots where they're like, here's a Cheerios box, like just wide open in the shot. I'm like, oh, that's where they got their funding from.
Well, funny story about the funding. So
he knows everything.
He knows everything about this movie.
Funny story about this.
Funny,
this is Matthew. This is Matthew Kadish's episode. Take it away.
Sorry. So Richard Donner got fired from this movie.
What?
Because like basically he was shooting episodes 1 and 2 at the same time, and his relationship with the producers got worse and worse the further it went, because they never gave him a budget and they never gave him a schedule, but they kept claiming he was going over budget and over schedule. And so like nobody knew how much money was being spent on this movie, and nobody knew how long it was going to take. I think that this movie took 19 months to shoot or something like that, which is an insane amount of time, but you're shooting 2 movies, right? But they fired him after the first movie was completed, and he had 70% of the second movie done. And then they brought in a new director, and they went out and finished the rest of that movie. And I think Richard Donner's name got taken off the sequel for it or something.
I
like
want that dude's job. Like come into a 70% done project and slap my name on it.
Well, like Ron Howard.
Was it Ron Howard?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't Ron Howard, but Solo.
Oh, for Solo. Yeah. Here's a movie that's pretty much done. Slap a Ron Howard label on it. Ron Howard. Just right on the ass.
Get in there.
Get in there, Ron Howard. Clap. That's great stuff. I don't know what else to say about this movie. I didn't enjoy it. I had a really hard time. That the thing that you were talking about, how this movie takes its time, I felt like it dragged.
Yeah,
I was like, I mean, maybe it's because I know the story for Superman backwards and forwards. Grew up watching the animated show. I've watched all the movies since, and I'm just like, I don't know if I'm burnt out on origin stories.
Yeah, I think with this movie, they were introducing Superman to an audience that largely knew of him, but didn't know like details.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a whole scene in here where Lois is interviewing him and he's like, I can't see through lead,
heavy exposition.
I always tell the truth.
I always tell the truth. So like there was a lot of stuff in there where they were setting up the character for people who weren't familiar with him. And it's because of this movie that we're so familiar with the character.
Again, I have issues with little stupid things.
I always tell the truth, but he lies about his.
But no, listen. So like he's on the rooftop with Lois. She's in her little nighty thing, and
that was a dress in the 70s.
It was. But listen, she's sitting there talking. She's interviewing him for a newspaper article.
Yeah,
and he literally sits there and he spells out all his weaknesses to her. It's like, I can't see through lead.
Yeah,
I'm from this planet Krypton. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So and then she goes and prints an article and tells Lex Luthor and every other villain on the planet, all of his weaknesses, how to get advantages against Superman. So then when Superman finally confronts Lex Luthor, he has this chain of kryptonite that he found and blah, 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 and it's in this lead box that, Lex Luthor wouldn't have known to put that thing in a lead box if Superman hadn't blabbed his stuff out to Lois Lane, up on the rooftop. It made no sense. Why would you tell the world your weaknesses?
You're the
as
first
a
superhero. Therefore, there are no supervillains either.
There is now.
Right.
and Lex Luthor was a supervillain.
2020 vision.
It's just weird that he would
I get it.
his weaknesses like
I don't think at that time that he considered that a weakness. He was just like, just like, the only thing I can't really see through is lead.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. And then Lex Luthor is the one who's like, ooh, I can use that.
I always tell the truth.
Making me bald.
There's ways to exploit people who to express their virtue.
This is back in the day.
Yeah, the 70s were a different time.
Yeah.
They trusted the press back then.
Probably the only one that was alive in the 70s.
And here, like Matt was saying,
actually, I was born that year.
Okay. You barely count.
Matt was saying earlier, like modern day movies have that cynicism, and this movie does not. So it wasn't a movie being made with the consciousness of like, hide your weaknesses, hide your vulnerabilities because someone will take advantage of it. Superman was so bright-eyed and good and earnest. And when he was talking to Lois Lane, he was just being honest with her about who he was. And it probably felt great to be able to be honest with someone that wasn't Ma.
Well, he was hid away by himself for 12, 15 years? 12 years.
Well, first he was on the farm and he wasn't allowed to like be honest about who he was. Yeah. He had to hide who he was. And then he's in solitude for 12 years. And now he's like out of the closet, so to speak. And he's allowed to like tell someone who he is. It must have been so exciting for him.
12-year-long acid trip.
Yeah.
It's like, journey with me, my son. And we're going to take a journey through the cosmos.
Wouldn't that be something
in
this
first year, we're going to learn about all the platitudes of man. In the second year, we're going to learn about the blabbity bloobity blab.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if like just Jor-El's freaking little hoverboard giant head just like pops out a little thing of LSD? Like, here you go, buddy. This will help you along your trip.
I don't know, man. I just
put this in your mouth.
And there was some stuff in this movie I didn't like. I feel like they just made shit up. With some of this movie too, like the thing at the end. Let's talk about the ending, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so angry that I didn't save the day that I'm gonna fly around the world.
Well, I think everyone has problems with this.
It's the dumbest shit ever, man.
Dumb.
And it's like even the creators of this movie back then. That's not from the comic books. I don't remember anything in any comic book ever. And maybe I'm wrong because I didn't read comic books in the 1940s. Okay, but that just seemed really stupid. It seemed really, really stupid. And the way they pulled it off in the movie just pissed me off. Let's just reverse the stock footage.
The stock footage. Well, here's the thing, though.
It's just like, oh my God.
What irritated, because you mentioned...
This is 1,030,000... What? How many
55.
billion?
55.
And they couldn't do anything better than, reel the film backwards.
Not at that time.
No.
Bullshit.
That's the best they could do.
It was nonsense. That's a fucking nonsense ending to this movie.
Remember the continuity that you were talking about? That you were like, it irritates me that the continuity's not there. Yeah. What irritated me, the ending of this movie, the big climactic ending. Superman's so mad. He reverses time. Like, okay, sure.
And then Jor-El's head pops up in the clouds.
But then I'm like, where's that nuclear bomb?
Yeah.
If he reversed time, wouldn't that bomb still be going off somewhere? Wouldn't people still be dying?
Or couldn't he reverse time to like the point where he could stop the nuclear bomb?
Or not go to Lex Luthor's house.
Not go to Lex Luthor's house. Yeah, where's the other version of him? When he revert, there's so many issues with the end of this movie that it's kind of like
Don't think about it.
You can't think about it.
But that's the thing, though. We can't not think about it.
It's like, couldn't he just like travel back in time at any point he wanted to stop tragedies from happening?
I'm just gonna go back to when before they blew Krypton up.
Is that how that works? You could reverse.
Is the whole universe in reverse?
Yeah.
Is it just Earth?
It's just
because
Earth.
You know, I don't.
He only rewound Earth.
You can't. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Time travel never makes sense.
It rarely does. Yeah.
It's just so
you
dumb.
can poke holes in Back to the Future too, but this was exceedingly egregious.
Exceedingly egregious.
Because you're watching it and you're like, he's turning the Earth backwards, and that's supposed to change time. Does it? Like, okay.
Wouldn't it be cool if that did work? Somebody would be
Elon would be out there with rockets going, all right, everybody, go this way.
He'd be building like giant rocket attachments to the Earth. We're going to spin it backwards.
We're going to go back.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I didn't mean to vote for him. Yeah.
What about Otis? Did you like Otis?
Otis?
Ned Beatty.
Yeah, Ned Beatty.
Otis.
Yeah,
Lex Luthor's
goofy
sidekick.
Oh. Okay, thank you for reminding me because that
we got a lot of shit to talk about.
Otisburg.
That reminded me.
Like, Otisburg? Really?
What's wrong with that, Mr. Luthor?
It's just a little place. Whose Chessburger has hers?
Otisburg. This so everybody knows famously John Williams' score for this movie.
Oh, yes,
it's
one of the greatest scores ever.
It's the best part of the movie. Iconic. What I hated though was that he just used some Jabba the Hutt reject music for Otis. It's like, it's the freaking French horn. It's literally Jabba the Hutt's music. Yeah. He was just like, well, I didn't use that for Star Wars, so I'm going to use it here for Otis because he's kind of a fat, blumbering idiot. I was watching that. I'm like, oh man, the music was so overbearing for those scenes where Otis was like walking around. I was just like, I don't need Jabba the Hutt theme music.
I kind of like Otis though. I have a deeper appreciation for him now. You know, like, he's just funny. He's just a funny dude. You know, he's walking around. It's like, you know, tries to take advantage of the blind dude selling newspapers and the dog's all, it's like, no, okay, sorry. You know?
If we were in this world, you would definitely be a henchman.
He's just how dare you?
You would.
How dare you?
I think she might be right.
Yeah. The bumbling henchman.
I didn't say bumbling.
The plucky sidekick.
I am nobody's fucking sidekick.
He is the plucky sidekick.
You'd be Miss Tessmacher, okay?
No, you'd be doing Miss Tessmacher. You'd be trying to get in those pants every day.
Imagine Otis.
How about when she smooches on Superman before she saves him?
Oh, yes.
And he's like, why'd you do that? She's like, oh, I knew you wouldn't let me.
Yeah, she Me Too'd him.
She did.
He was literally chained up.
He's dying. And she's like, I'm going to get a little.
I'm going to get a little
smooch.
Super rapey.
That scene right there.
She's like, those army guys did worse to me. He'll be fine.
Dude, seriously. It's just rape going all around.
Yeah.
Can you see the videos? Can you see the YouTube videos if this was the current movie? Oh my God. There's so much rapey.
The culture was so toxic.
Such a
patriarchy
movie.
Naked babies.
How dare Miss Tessmacher sexually assault Clark Kent when he's tied up.
This is a groomer movie.
Jesus Christ. There we are. We finally got into our role.
Yes, that's it. Now I like this movie even more.
Can we just talk about John Williams' score for a second?
Sure, go for it. I mean, the iconic Superman music is the best part of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, he set the benchmark. They still use that
theme.
Yeah,
as well they should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's Superman.
Yeah. 100%. Well, go ahead. What did you have for thoughts on that?
Well, it's just funny. So like these Superman movies have some of the longest credits in like history, and it's all so that they can show off the score. And I don't know how John Williams did it, but when you listen to the score, like the music literally says Superman, like when you're listening to it. And it's so brilliant. It's one of the most brilliantly composed scores, I think, for any movie ever.
I mean, John Williams, nobody will ever touch it.
Yeah.
He's the man when it comes to
Hans Zimmer is coming. Is it Hans Zimmer? He's getting up there.
Good.
He's got some hard hitters.
Danny
in that.
Elfman. but they're not John Williams. They're there, but they're not quite.
True. I mean, John Williams, Star Wars, Jaws, Superman,
Jaws, Indiana Jones.
If
you guys love music as much as I listen to a podcast. I'm not trying to like shut this podcast out, but I feel like it's necessary.
Sure.
The soundtrack show. Mm-hmm. If you guys want to get like a super deep dive analytical look at like a lot of John Williams' work, got the soundtrack show. It's a fantastic podcast.
The soundtrack show?
I'm sorry. Shout out to Shady Mile. The soundtrack show is an amazing podcast that break down the most iconic movie music ever. And the way they do it is so great because they actually get to use the audio. They're not, be held by YouTube's copyright claims or anything like that. But it's a great podcast. And it helps me appreciate music in a whole new way, especially John Williams stuff. Like the way, like Katie said, he literally is using words in his music where it's like, this is Superman. And it just goes into it. Yeah. Superman. And that's it. I don't know. You guys want to do final thoughts for this? Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
You ready for that? All right, Jude, you're ready. Go for it. Go. Oh. Gosh. All right. Shady Mile. Go to caskers.com. Get yourself some good old whiskey. There it is right here behind me. Jude, final thoughts. Give it a rating.
So I just think that this is a really fun, nostalgic movie. Is it something that I would want to watch in my regular rotation? Not necessarily, but I haven't seen it in so long that revisiting it this time gave me such an appreciation of where we are now in movie making. And it just felt good to see something that just wanted to make the viewer feel good. Like introduce this superhero who is honest and forthright and transparent. I mean, other than his, secret identity. And it just felt nice to not have a superhero movie that's like, I am vengeance. I am darkness. I am the law. and this just feels good to watch. And I have such an appreciation for this time capsule of a movie.
Okay.
So I think it's great. I think you should definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. See the original Superman and know where we have come from. It's the movie Grandpa, and everybody loves their grandpa.
This is true. Fair enough.
Yeah. So I guess I'll give it 3.5 nostalgia points.
Okay. It's fair. V, you ready to go?
I agree with everything you said.
Thank you.
However, I do not think this movie has aged as well as I thought it had. I just found myself laughing a lot at how cringy and weird some of this movie is. But again, it's definitely a nostalgia bomb, a feel good nostalgia bomb when you watch this movie. And I hadn't watched this movie for a long time. And it was a fun watch. But at the same time, I also feel like I've said, it hasn't aged great. There's a lot of really weird story stuff story-wise that doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of weird edits and cuts in this movie that I never saw before that I see now. I'm going to give this thing 3 stars. I probably would have given it 4 20 years ago, but I'm going to give it 3 now. And a full star of that is just strictly for nostalgia purposes because, I can't not.
So it's a 2-star movie, but with nostalgia and respect, it gets up to 3.
I think so.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's about the best I can do.
It's a dangerous stance to take.
Yeah. But, it is what it is. It's a classic. I'm not going to say it's not a classic. But it's just a kind of a weird, trippy acid trip of a movie. There's a lot of weirdness in this thing. The 10-minute long flying scene, the front credits when Clark is flying to Earth in his space star rocket.
It's like 15 minutes long.
With all the weird kaleidoscopy, close your eyes and rub your eyeballs.
They had to do that practically.
It's weird. It's just
they worked hard on that opening credit sequence.
Dude, it's like if the universe really looked like that would be some really crazy. It was
basically like a year-long ride. They trimmed it down to 15 minutes. What more do you want?
Yeah, actually, it was 2 years.
It was long. Yeah, he was like a 3-year-old kid when he popped out of that thing. Yeah, weird. It's 3 stars.
Dingleberries sticking out there.
Jesus Christ.
What? It's like a little naked kid.
No, it's fine. Kate is
strange. There's full frontal nudity in this thing. It's very weird.
Why did you mention that?
Like that.
That's fucking weird, man. That's a baby.
It is what it is.
I'm surprised it was in there too. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't like seeing naked babies.
Yeah, I don't need naked babies in my feature films.
I don't either.
We don't need- just so everyone's aware, I would prefer no more naked babies in film.
I'm there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got
If
you.
you're making movies for me, I don't need it.
I wonder if that kid's like, hey man, that's me. I was
He's your age.
I was naked Clark Kent baby when I was a kid. My parents put me in that movie.
Dude, did you guys hear, speaking of the kid on the cover of Nirvana's Nevermind?
Yeah.
He sued them because he was naked on the cover for so many years. He sued him for
It's like,
damages.
bro, you're a baby.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he made money too.
Probably.
Probably they settled.
Probably settled. That
Yeah.
part.
That's just wild.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Strange.
go after him. Guy. Kadish, what's your rating for this
Get
movie?
I actually think the actor who played Baby Superman died.
Why do you do that to me every time?
Wah, wah,
It's kind of funny, like how many people who are involved with this movie or who are now no longer
You gotta
alive.
be careful how you use the word funny. It's
Yeah.
not funny.
How about
Man, it's
Interesting. Try to replace it with interesting.
bring up your thesaurus?
Vader, get on that for me.
Yeah.
I need other words from funny.
Odd, strange,
Yeah.
unusual,
Unfortunate when talking
Yeah.
about people dying.
Yeah, but I mean, Richard Donner is no
Crazy.
longer around.
He was probably old in 1978, wasn't he? I don't know.
I don't know. Like he was making movies for like a long time. But so I'm going to judge this movie based off of the time period in which it was made, because I don't feel like it's fair to judge it from like a modern viewpoint. Basically, this movie was technologically very innovative. The prejudice against superhero movies at this point was like a very hard one to overcome because Batman 66 basically ruined the public's perception of what a superhero movie could be.
Mm-hmm.
So it had like a lot of hurdles to overcome. It was a movie that was out of control in terms of like budget scheduling. It had very difficult actors to work with. But at the same time, like the acting in this movie is really top notch. Like if you look at Christopher Reeve, he basically was an actor who was tasked with playing two separate roles in the same movie. And there's a great scene in this film where basically he goes to pick up Lois Lane as Clark Kent for his date.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes into the restroom and he takes off his glasses and he just kind of like shifts his posture just ever so slightly.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And he becomes like an entirely different character in that moment. And these little things that Christopher Reeve did, like basically I heard an interview with him in one of the documentaries where he said, as an actor, when I was wearing the suit, the instinct is to go big, like, strike a pose and like really project and be powerful.
superhero pose.
Yeah. And basically he said, like, I decided to just let the suit do the talking for me and just play it very small and just like, don't do any like big postures or anything, like just be a normal person and have the suit represent the super aspect of it. And so his instincts for all this Superman stuff was just on point. And he even said, he was like, I looked at it like I was the steward of this character who just my responsibility was to treat this character with respect and not do anything to harm it. And I feel like more actors should take that kind of like philosophy with roles nowadays.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're right. I have no hate to Christopher Reeve.
Not at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think he is and still is. When I think of Superman, I think of Christopher Reeve.
Mhm.
When I think of Superman,
Yeah.
I don't think of Henry Cavill, even though I think Henry Cavill is a good Superman. My generation, Christopher Reeve is the cookie cutter,
Rightfully so.
Superman.
Yeah.
So
And just that moment
Yeah.
that Kadish was talking about with his posture, where like you can see as Clark Kent with the glasses and the suit, he would sit and then he took the glasses off and he just raised his chest up and you're like, oh, that's a completely different person.
There's a superhero under there.
That's a superhero right there. Yeah.
I wish these movies had gotten better the more they made, because this movie series turns to hot trash. Hot trash.
Was it
Is
Nuke
this
Dukem Man or
Richard
whatever?
Pryor bullshit and stuff. Yeah, it's just it gets so weird
Yeah.
that this is
The second one's
peak.
good though.
This is the peak. This in the second movie.
I think the second one's the peak.
But anyway,
Anyway,
Go ahead,
Kadish,
man.
finish your thoughts.
Real quick,
Oh.
to address something that we were unsure of. So the baby, like the baby, passed away His name was Lee Quigley. He died at age 14 in 1991.
Oh.
Yeah, it's very sad. But the naked baby still alive and well.
Okay.
Wow.
Go get him.
Funny thing, guys.
Good to know. So
his name is Aaron Smolinski. Sorry.
So out of everything with like the movies, like technical prowess, the movies, great acting, I actually think that the story was well told. It was a good adaptation of the character, especially overcoming a lot of like the kind of preconceived notions of what a superhero movie should be. This movie is really earned its place as a classic, you know, like classic score, classic iconography, classic special effects, classic actors. Everything about this movie just gelled, and it's become part of the social fabric of America. You know, like everyone knows of this movie, even like Alex, even though like he hadn't seen it, he was aware of it, you know?
Yep.
So I got to give this one 5 stars. It is like, it is deserving of that 5-star classic movie stature, in my opinion.
No.
That's a really weird take, Matt.
I understand.
You're not allowed to tell people no for their star ratings.
I can do what I want. I don't agree. That's what I mean by no. I don't agree. I think it is a good movie, and I think it does have its place in the classic. But being a classic and being the first to do something doesn't necessarily mean it was done exceedingly well. There's other movies that are older or just as old as this that still hold up. That I think even now you watch them today and you're like, oh, freaking amazing movie. It's great. I'd watch it today and it looks like it's made, 2 years ago.
I think it's the film student coming out.
It is a little bit. That's fine.
I'm a film student. I appreciate things better than you guys.
I just noticed your shirt kind of reminds me of the Superman.
You guys can get this at saltynerdstore.com.
Yeah, where's my hoodie?
Shit, I forgot to order your hoodie. We got hoodies too.
Forgot your kid. Forget my hoodie.
Very forgetful lately.
You need to take some ginkgo biloba or something to get your brain kicking in.
Is that a mushroom?
I don't know.
It's not called that either.
Anyway,
please continue.
For me, I'm going to give it a 3-star, and I'm kind of in agreement with you. Personally, watching it, it's a 2-star movie, but I'm going to give it an extra star just for the respect that it deserves.
Yeah, sure.
3 stars. Boom. Good.
Deserves more than that.
Fist bump.
3 stars this side.
We're going to get roasted in the comments.
I don't care.
Comment below how wrong we are.
Hey, at least you pronounced his name right.
Who?
Christopher Reeve.
Christopher Reeve.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was Reeves.
It's not like he's from Portugal.
Is it plural or is it just one?
Anyway,
it's
right
Beam, not Bahim.
Bahim. I still get comments about that to this day.
You
Singular.
Singular, not plural. Okay.
People are still calling you ignorant. In the stuff.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. That RRR video, man.
Yeah.
Get it. It's fine.
3 stars.
3 stars. 5 stars. Would you give it?
3.5.
Okay. All right, guys, that's it for the podcast. If you're still watching at this point, please consider going to saltynerdclub.com and becoming a club member. If you love what we do and you're here every single week with us, we have even more awesome, fun, raw, unedited content for you in the club members area. And this year, we are going to be doing Star Trek, the original series commentaries for our club members. So we'll be giving you guys like watch along timestamps and you guys can watch the show with us. We haven't got that started yet, but it's going to be in the works here in a couple of weeks. And we're really looking forward to rolling that out. So join up. It's only $5 a month. You guys get access to that. And you will also be on the end credits of this video rolling by all of our supporters. So if you want to have your name on the video at the end, jump into saltynerdclub.com. That's the place to be. V, what do you guys got going on Saturdays?
Saturdays, just talking about more stuff people like to hate on.
Like Velma?
Like Velma. Yeah, it's good times. Good times. We're getting together with other YouTubers like Odin, and we got Brian from the Popcast. He's like our co-host. He joins us every week, our merch partner, and it's good times. Good times. Got some people lined up, I think, that are going to be fun, and it's going to be good stuff. The topics change every week, so I can't tell you what's coming up.
All right. That's it for the podcast. Say goodbye, everybody. V, say goodbye to the people.
See you guys.
Jude.
Hey, thanks for watching.
Kish.
Up and away.
Stay salty, my friends.